Christopher's challenge for today is to correctly list the 11th through 15th presidents and vice presidents of the United States. The names he has to choose from are Millard Fillmore, George Dallas, William King, Andrew Carnegie, James Buchanan, Robert E. Lee, Samuel Morse, Jefferson Davis, James K. Polk, John C. Breckinridge, Franklin Pierce, Zachary Taylor, and Daniel Boone. Are you ready, Christopher? Now, begin, Christopher.
Christopher says the 11th president was James Polk and his vice president was George Dallas. James Knox Polk was the 11th president, serving from 1845 to 1849. Polk was a longtime friend of Old Hickory, Andrew Jackson, and this friendship earned him the nickname of Young Hickory. Polk's wife hosted the first Thanksgiving dinner ever to be held in the White House. Polk kept his campaign promise of not seeking a second term in office. He enlarged the size of the country by 2/3 through diplomatic negotiations with Britain over the northern border and war with Mexico over the southern border. Polk lived for the shortest length of time post-term, dying only 103 days after leaving office. Polk's vice president, George M. Dallas, is possibly the namesake for the famous city in Texas. During the Mexican-American War, Dallas was a proponent for the annexation of all of Mexico. After serving as vice president, he served as minister to Great Britain under Franklin Pierce. Dallas, adhering to the Dred Scott decision, refused to grant Frederick Douglass a passport on the grounds that Douglass was officially property, not an American citizen. According to Christopher, the 12th president is Zachary Taylor and his vice president is Millard Fillmore. Old rough and ready Zachary Taylor was the 12th president of the United States. A descendant of the Pilgrim William Brewster, he was commissioned into the Army by Thomas Jefferson. The Whig Party nominated Taylor in 1848 without his knowledge or presence at the convention. They mailed the notification without postage paid, and Taylor refused to pay the postage, and it was returned to sender. It wasn't until weeks later that Taylor learned of his nomination. Taylor died on July 9, 1850, only about 16 months into his term. One theory is that the fresh cherries and cold milk that he consumed to celebrate Independence Day caused his illness. There were rumors, however, that he was poisoned due to his firm stance against the spread of slavery. Taylor's son-in-law was Jefferson Davis, the future president of the Confederacy, and his son served as a general in the Confederate Army. Zachary Taylor's vice president was Millard Fillmore. Fillmore's term as vice president only lasted about 16 months when the death of Taylor promoted Fillmore to the presidency. According to Christopher, the 13th president of the United States is Millard Fillmore. The 13th president, Millard Fillmore, took the presidential oath of office on July 10, 1850. The office of vice president remained vacant throughout his term. Fillmore rose from log cabin poverty to the White House and famously married his school teacher. Fillmore and his wife Abigail installed the first permanent library in the White House, with Abigail contributing her own books to start the collection. Fillmore sent Commodore Matthew Perry to Japan, and trade with Japan was finally opened after their 200-year-old closed-door policy. Fillmore failed to win the Whigs Party nomination for re-election. According to Christopher, the 14th president was Franklin Pierce, and his vice president was William King. Our 14th president was Franklin Pierce, or Handsome Frank, as he was nicknamed. Pierce ran for office with the slogan, "We poked you in 44 and we will pierce you in 52. Pierce and his wife lost 3 sons 2 months before his inauguration. A train carrying Pierce, his wife, and their remaining son derailed and crashed. While Pierce and his wife suffered only minor injuries, their 11-year-old son was killed. The inauguration was a somber event. Pierce had bouts of depression and alcoholism. His opponents mocked him by saying that Pierce was the hero of many a well-fought battle. Unhappiness with the way he handled the Bleeding Kansas issue and others, Pierce was not nominated by his party for a second term. Pierce's curse also seemed to affect his vice president, William King. King was the only vice president to not be inaugurated in America. King took the oath of office while he was in Cuba, where he had traveled to try to recover from tuberculosis. He left Cuba and returned to his home in Alabama, where he died only 45 days after taking the oath of office and never having performed any duty as vice president. The office remained vacant after his death. According to Christopher, the 15th president is James Buchanan, and his vice president is John C. Breckinridge. Serving only one term, James Buchanan, the 15th president, was the only president who never married. His fiancée had committed suicide after a misunderstanding with Buchanan, which left him bereft. Buchanan's niece served as First Lady. Buchanan was not up to handling the troubling issue of slavery. Between Lincoln's election and inauguration, 7 states seceded from the Union. Buchanan sat by, doing nothing. While not agreeing with secession, he felt that he could not interfere with states' rights. Buchanan's vice president, John C. Breckinridge, was the youngest vice president in American history, only 36 years old when he assumed office. After being defeated by Lincoln in the 1860 presidential election, he served as senator for Kentucky. Breckinridge was then commissioned as a brigadier general for the Confederate Army on November 2, 1861. On November 16th, he was given command of the 1st Kentucky Brigade. In December, he was labeled a traitor and formally expelled from the United States Congress. Breckinridge served as a general in the Confederate Army until he became Jefferson Davis's Secretary of War in February of 1865.